Okay, I have a 2007 Ford Edge here. We're going to be replacing this rack and pinion here today. It's not leaking or anything, but it's went out, and apparently it's just getting almost impossible to turn this. You can drive it still, but it's very, very difficult. It's possible the pump could be bad because of this tube. Don't really know, but anyways, we're going to be replacing. I just got another used one here. Now, normally I don't have to replace these, but when they took these off, they really boogered up the ends of them. And if you can see how it's, so there's no way you're going to get anything threaded on that. So I'm going to have to be a little bit more cautious when I'm removing mine. So I'll just measure and get a good accurate measurement and put them back on the same. So anyways, whatever the cause, this has went out, and we're going to get another one on here. And other than that, it runs really well. So I've got my jack here, and we're going to go ahead and get started just to get to lifting this thing up and get it on some jack stands and getting these front wheels off here. Okay, and just as a disclaimer, before you start watching this video, make sure to watch it all the way through. There was some things that I did in the wrong order that wound up taking longer, so make sure that you watch the video all the way through so you can do this as quickly as possible. Okay, you want to go ahead and break these loose before you go to lifting it up. And I found that a 3/4 is going to work the best. A 19 fits, but these lugs like to get stuck on there, so a little bit easier to use the 3/4. Okay, just back here behind the driver's front tire, I got a hold of the frame, and I just got my jack stand there on that control arm. And we're just going to go on the other side and do the exact same thing. That's going to get it up plenty high enough. I'm using 6-ton jack stands, but you could use 2 tons as well. But these are a little bit bigger. Okay, we got our lugs off. Just getting ready to go ahead and remove our wheels here. Okay, and we can see, we get in here, we can see we got that tie rod coming right through the bottom there. Got a clip. We need to just take a screwdriver and pry that out of there. Okay, so we're just going to take some needle nose and pop this off of here. Take a screwdriver and get on that back side there. We just have to pop that up a little bit. You can see how you just have to take your screwdriver and pry that little part on the back up that hooks around right there. So we're just prying that up a little bit. So we'll put that aside, and we'll go ahead and get on here, figure out what size this socket's going to be here. Okay, 18 millimeter fits this real nicely. And we're just going to go ahead and get down here on it. I got an extended handle ratchet here. You can also use a breaker bar. This is coming real easy. Actually, probably should have been a little bit tighter than that, I think. These usually get like 45 foot-pounds. We're going to go ahead and we're going to bring this nut where it's up flush with the end. It's probably the problem that dismantlers had. They either took the nut off completely and whacked it with a hammer, or I've even been on using the little tie rod tools, or the little, whatever they call them, the Tippmann arm tools, where you tighten the bolt. I've bent these because they have that hole going through there for the cotter pin, and it kind of weakens the bolt, and so they're very easy. I've bent them because sometimes they are really no joke to get loose. So we're going to go a little more. We want this to be absolutely flush with the end of our bolt, because I cannot ruin these because I don't have any others, because I was relying on the ones that came with it. Usually they're not damaged, and with that one having 50,000 miles on it, they would have been in a lot better shape, I'm sure, because this vehicle's right at about 200. Now, before I go to hitting that thing, I'm going to want to pull this wire for this ABS over here out of the way. So let's go ahead and get a hammer. Now, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we knock that loose, we're going to get over here on this nut right here while that's in place, because I need to get that loose. Sometimes those things are really tight. So we need to go ahead and figure out what size that is and get that loose. Okay, what I got here is a 15/16, and it fits this thing perfectly. And I'm going to try to turn this counterclockwise here, this nut. It's already being held by the tie rod itself, so I'm just going to need to get some pressure on it. And sometimes these things can be really tight. A lot of times what I wind up doing is getting a hammer up here and hitting this, getting it into position, and I'll take a hammer, my rubber mallet, and I'll give it a hit right here. I think I'm going to do that. Okay, I've just hit it with my rubber mallet here, my shot-filled rubber mallet, and got it loose. That's all I've done. I'm going to just push that nut, because sometimes they're just really tight. And I'm just going to go ahead and push it back up where it was, back up against the but I don't want to get it out here on the ground and have to take it loose. I want to break it loose now before I get it loose here. So now we got that loose. Before we take that off, we're going to get a measurement on this from just the end of these threads here somewhere, and we'll get a measurement. It's usually pretty close. By the time I take some string and run from the back, I can get it pretty quick that way without having to move it a lot. But it's really easy to adjust these with your vehicle up on jack stands anyway. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get a hammer here. We're going to hit this right here, just a regular hammer. Okay, and one thing I will say is with every vehicle, I never know how bad these are going to be. It just depends on the vehicle of how difficult they want to be. But you absolutely want that nut flush with the end of that, so you're not messing these bolts, these tie rods up. So we're going to hit this thing. I'm not really in a good position here, but you get the idea. I want to hit it right in the center and try to get this thing loose here. Okay, I got into position a little better. We're going to try to hit this thing. And this is really stuck on here, and I have to be careful, because even with this, it's not hard to mess these threads up. So we may have to try my other little tool if this doesn't want to budge. So far, it is not wanting to come loose at all here. Okay, I had another little trick there that worked better. I took my 18 socket, and of course this is an impact socket, so I'm not going to hurt any. I just put it on the nut, and I just hit this 2 times, and it knocked it loose. So that actually gave me the force that I needed, because I could hit this thing really hard. So that's how I'll do that other side. As you can see, the threads are still good, so we won't have any problems there. Okay, and I will say these outer tie rods aren't that great, but they will work for now. But as you can see, we got it off there without damaging it, like the other ones that are all just bent down. So no way you're going to get a nut back on something like that, and if you do, you're going to strip the threads out and you're never going to get it torqued down. Don't ask how I know this. Okay, and with this side loose, we're just going to go over to the other side and do the exact same thing before we get under the vehicle here. Okay, so we come over here and we look at this one. We can see kind of what we have to do here. We've got this line right here. Got a little spout coming off of it. We got another line where the pipe thread's going to go in here, and we've got this. It's going to go into. It's got a bolt up on the collar, so we know we got those to disconnect. And then also we got these two big bolts that are coming through here that we have to get on. So there's not a whole lot. We've got the ends disconnected now, both of the ends out there. So we just got these two bolts to deal with. And then we got this line's going to have a little clamp on it that you just take the clamp, push it back, push the hose off. And then this one, it's got the pipe fitting going into that. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to go under, we're going to loosen up these big bolts first. And then once we get them loose, we're going to go ahead and take these loose before we just take those bolts out. But I want to get those loose before I get taking these lines loose, and then I've got everything dripping down on me. So we're going to go ahead and work on that next. Okay, I was actually looking at this thing wrong. It actually sets like this. We're going to have a bolt coming down in the front and the back. They're going down. I was thinking they were coming through the front. So we've got a bolt here and a bolt there, and it's bolting down to that subframe. So let me show you where the ones are over here on the driver's side first. Okay, so you can, it's difficult to see here, but you can see that one right under there, like right there in the middle. We got that one. We got to figure out how to get to that. And then we got one in the back there, and it's also difficult to see from this angle. I can see it, but it's hard to see it on. So right there. So these are in the front and the back. So I'm gonna try to figure out how the easiest way to get to these. It's looking like there's really not any good way to get from the bottom the best I can see. So I'm gonna go up top and take a look around here. Okay, and it might make it easier just to remove this inner tie rod here, but I'm trying to get it without doing that. I'm just using a 15 millimeter up there on that, but it was really snug. And I'm just putting that on there and using another one here as some extra leverage. And that's what I'm doing, but it may in fact be easier to take that inner tie rod out. So I was going to try it this way and see how far I can get, and then I may wind up doing that if it gets more in the way, because I've got a tie rod tool. I just need to pull this down. I'll get this measurement here, and I'll just yank all this off of here, because that's going to get all this out of the way so I can actually get in there and make it a little easier. And then I'll deal with that back one after I get this front one here. Okay, so right now I'm just going ahead and taking this outer tie rod off here. You just, once this is loose, it should turn off easily. At least it's supposed to. So we're going to go ahead and twist this off. I've measured the distance from 5/8 to the back, so I'll know when I put this back together that I'm going to make sure that I put it back in the same spot. So I'm going to take this nut off here now, and then I'm going to get back there. And there's usually a band around the back side of these. We have the little clip up on the front here. We have to get that. And then we'll just slide this whole thing off. Okay, you'll hold this with a 17 millimeter if you have to, if it spins on you, to take this 15/16 loose. Hold that little part. You can see there's flats, and that 17 millimeter fits on her. So we got this off. I got the clamp off. That's the clamp that was on here. So now we're going to get back here. It's actually got one of those little twisty one, so I just have to reach back in there and twist that by hand, untwist it counterclockwise, and then it'll loosen that band up, and I'll be able to slip this whole rubber boot right here, just pull it completely off of there. Okay, there's that band loose, and we'll still have to get this to come over the top of this, and that's usually kind of difficult because it likes to stick on this front, but we're gonna pull that off there, and you can see we got this little twisty band loose. Not for sure if I'll put this back or just put a zip tie. I doubt very seriously with this front clamp on here that it would even come off, and it's just difficult to get in there. You can see this is loose, but we got to get it off the front of this right here now. Okay, well, I stand corrected about this leaking. It was leaking, and it just poured out of that boot when I pulled it off there. Now, I was really hoping that this was going to clear up a little bit more room, but I don't think it's going to help me out a whole lot here. And these got these little bands you can see back there that crimp on there, so when you replace these tie rods you have to bend that thing up to be able to get your tool on there, and not even for sure what the purpose. That keeps it from spinning, so those little tabs got to be bent up. So I'm thinking that I'm not going to mess with that now, and I'm going to have to figure something else out here. The problem is that bolt back there is just not wanting to loosen up. It's just very tight, very difficult, and even though I've got it loosened a little bit, it still doesn't want to come out. So I'm going to go back to what I was doing and maybe figure out how to get something else in here that may make it a little easier. At least I got the boot out of the way, so it clears up a little room. Okay, so I finally got that first bolt out with all that Loctite. It's no wonder that it was so much fun to get out of there, but we're gonna go. Said the only thing I could get in there with was just a wrench, just a little wrench, and using the curved part to get in there because there's just no. This is in the way. This is in the way. You got this clearance here in the way, so there's really no good way of doing it, I think, besides dropping the subframe. But I don't really want to do that if I don't have to. I got the first bolt out. It wasn't fun. It was time consuming, but we got that out. We're going to get back there on that back one that you see. I'm going to have to get under the vehicle, and we're going to get that one, see how we can go about getting that one out. Okay, we're back here under the vehicle. You can see where the control arm is, and I'm right back here behind all this frame and stuff where the exhaust is coming back, and I'm just looking back up in here. Now this one back here is no problem at all. The only thing that we have is the line right here that's running over the top of it, which is not a big deal. I'm going to take that off, and I'm just going to route it. You can see there's a clamp that they're running into right here, and we're going to take we're going to go ahead and take this one out, and I'm going to go ahead and take this one out. I don't know if there's anything else holding these two. Okay, we got a 10 or something right there. I think it's an 8. That's the clamp. Okay, so we're going to take that off, and we're going to go ahead and take this loose and take this loose and just get these plumb out of the way. We got all kinds of room back here though, and it hadn't been for that bar, it looks like you could even have come from back here to got that other one maybe, but I don't know. This one back here is no problem to get. And let's see if the other one, whereabouts is it at? Looks like can't really tell from here. I'm gonna have to get reoriented. But anyways, the other one, is that it right there? I think that might be it. It's it right there. You can see it right here. And that one's not going to be too difficult because we don't have anything up above it. So these back here are actually going to be easy. It's just those two out there on that near the fender well. But then once we get done with this, we've got to try to figure out how in the heck we're going to get it out of here. So worst case scenario, we have to drop this subframe, which is just a matter of supporting the body back here and getting up here with some impact tools and dropping some of this stuff down. Just whatever it takes, it's got to come out of here. So I'm going to just continue doing what I do, and I'm going to get all the bolts out, and then we're going to figure it out from there and just see what needs to be done. But you know, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking that there's probably not going to be any wiggle room as far as getting this thing out of here through the bottom or the back. So we'll just have to see. Okay, so this line right here is a 17 millimeter. I was just using my ratchet wrench here because it was what I had handy. So we're going to get a drip pan over here. I got that loose. I'm just going to get the drip pan under here. We're going to go ahead and get our needle nose on this clamp right here. Pull this back and pop that line off as well. And then, like I said, we just got the little 8 millimeter on this clamp up here, and this will be loose. Okay, got these lines dripping a little bit. There's actually 2 of these little 8 millimeters up here on these clamps. You can see that one there, and there's like one right over here as well that I've got loose. But anyways, there's 2 of those, and I'm ready to pull these lines back out here. There's the 2 8 millimeter bolts, but that's got the lines loose now from the rack, and it's just dripping a little bit. I doubt there's a lot of fluid in here because most of it has leaked out by the looks of it, but I've got to pop that line up there off still, and then these lines here will be completely loose. We're just going to pull them down here and let them drain. Okay, I'm up here with my extended handle ratchet, and I've just kind of come up above this exhaust sort of here and getting on that bolt over here. And these are really tight to start with, so you have to have some kind of extended handle and get it up here and break it loose. You will not be able to get any leverage on it with a little short one. So I've got it loose now, so I can shorten this thing up here, or switch over to a shorter ratchet here. Okay, here we are getting ready to remove that bolt. So now we've got 2 of them. This goes in the rear. So now we've got 2 more. I think we're going to try to get over here and get on this other bolt on the other side now, and see if we can't get it loose right there. And I'm just going to use kind of the same method and just get up here and try to get some leverage and work it out, and then we'll go to that outside one. So we'll just have 1 left. I'm just kind of playing it by ear. See what we have to do once we get the bolts all out. I've got the lines off, so the only thing that's left is the pin up here. That's a 10 millimeter up at the top, little pinch point there. Take that bolt out, and that should slip right off of there. It's just a matter of getting that bolt out. We'll probably work on that before we crawl out from under here as well. Okay, so now I'm just out back here removing this one from the back here. So now we have 3 of them out, and they look to be all the same. Okay, I'm up here with a little bit of an extension, a 10 millimeter. I'm getting on that pinch bolt right there, and it's coming pretty easy. It's not like these others, so we're going to have to completely remove it. And then once we do that, it should come off of there without too much difficulty. So I'm going to go ahead and finish just taking that bolt, that 10mm out. Okay, as far as this little collar goes, you should be able to push it up unless it's rusted on there. So I push it up a little bit. I'm just using some needle nose pliers here. I'm just kind of pressing it up off of this here. You can't see with my hand in the way there, but it should come off of there. It's loose. Just kind of push it up. You can see it's loose there now. So yeah, it's just pushing right up, just like that. So we'll make sure that we put that back down exactly like that, that we're not turning that or anything, and it goes right back just like that. You got that little, you can see that little indentation on the bar right there that fits into. I know the one I got, the replacement's a little bit rustier than this, but it should be fine. So now we can crawl out from under this dripping mess and let it finish dripping, get out there on that outside and try to get that final one. And regardless of what we have to do, we got to get these bolts out. So I'm just playing it by ear, and then we're going to see what little we have to take out to get this thing out of here. That's the goal. Okay, so we're over here getting this final bolt. I actually was coming through here and just got my little ratchet with an extension on that. I mean, these are really tight. Even the wrench wasn't cutting it on this side. I was able to get back behind that sway bar there and loosen it with a little bit of an extension there. That's how I'm getting that. And so I'm just about got it loose here. I'm just using this area right here to get it loose. And this is the final bolt. And we're going to have to figure out what we're going to do next. But that's pretty loose. Yeah, let's see if we can get this ratchet back out of here. You can see I'm just using a little short ratchet. It's kind of important, if you can, to get in there with a 6-sided. So you're not rounding these off. They're like so tight at first till you get them broke loose. So I don't know what they tighten these things down to, but it is really, really tight. So I'm going to reach in there and get that bolt out. Okay, and just to show you that this thing is loose here, we don't have nothing else holding it. So now we're going to figure out exactly how we're going to get it out of here, and that's what I'm not 100% sure on, but I'm thinking that a little bit of this subframe is going to have to be dropped to have clearance to at least slide it out one side or the other. So as you can see, there's no way that we've got room as it is right here to slide this through here. And I don't see any way of getting it out any other way than sliding it out one of these edges here, because I don't think it's going to fit out the back either. I just can't see that happening. I don't believe there's enough room under there. So we're going to have to see about dropping this subframe down a little bit on this one side, which means I'm going to have to move my jack stand or get another block or something over here under the actual frame first of all, and then we're going to have to see what all we got holding this thing down. But I can get my impact and start popping some of these loose. I'm hoping that I can simply loosen them up and get enough room to bring it out of here on one side and just slide it back in to the other. So that's the plan at this point. Okay, so you can save yourself a little time and trouble when you do yours. Just block it up back here under the frame, because you're going to be taking this subframe loose. and it's going to get in your way up here. And I'm also going to need my jack stands to help support this subframe here. So we're just going to get under here and see what exactly we're going to have to do, because I don't know any other way to do it. So we've got some bolts here. I guess we might as well just start with them. We've got a motor mount there that's going to prevent us from bringing this down, I'm all but certain. And probably going to need to take that out. We got a couple of big bolts up here in the front, and so my hopes is that I can take some of these out and get enough slack to slide it out. Other than that, I don't know. I don't have any other ideas, really, short of taking the engine out of here, how you're supposed to get this out. So I hadn't run across this before, actually. This is one of the first that I've seen where this rack and pinion is so difficult. But I'm just going to go ahead and get started removing some of these. I'm going to get my jack stand under here to kind of help support, and I'm just going to like start on one side, loosen them up, and like take these bolts out and loosen up these big bolts and let it drop down a little bit and see what I got to work with. And then I'm going to go to the other side and do the same exact thing. And these are going to be pretty tight, so I'm going to need to get my breaker bar, figure out what these sizes are as well. Okay, so far under here I've removed a couple of 15s out of this bracket. I've just brought this down here. It's not completely loose. I've just got it where it's sitting there, so if it drops down, I've got that one completely out, and it's sitting over here. There's those two 15s out of there. And then the only other one's up here, and I've got it loosened off down this far. And I'm going to go over to the other side over here and just do the exact same thing and see what kind of slack, if any, that I get here. Because other than that, I'm not going to have room to get it out of here. So even if I have to remove some more stuff, some more exhaust, I mean, the exhaust runs under here, so I would have to remove this section here and that down there and get it out of the way if I have to drop this down very far, or I have to disconnect the exhaust from these right here, one or the other. I guess I could do that, but I still wouldn't have a lot of slack unless I take those off the hanger down there. So just whichever one's easier, I'm going to do. So I'm going to go over to the other side and loosen them off and see if I get any more slack and what I'm looking at here. Okay, just to show you where we're at here, I've went ahead and separated the ball joint here, and I had difficulty doing that. There's a reason that the rotor and the caliper and brackets off, and those are 19s that come through the back. I've just taken those off and then stuck this up here for now, and then I was able to take my hammer, my rubber mallet, and a bar, and I was hitting it right here and knocked that down because it was stuck, didn't want to come loose. So we had to separate this from the knuckle. We've got most everything else loose. However, we got some more work to do underneath. I'm going to go ahead and show you that now. Okay, so we're crawling under here to the center of the exhaust, and you'll notice this little heat shield here. You've got a couple 10 millimeters to remove, and this is covering this center bracket. You can see the top one there. You can get your fingers in there. I was using a little ratchet wrench to get both of these loose, and then just finish removing it at 10 millimeter by hand. Now this should come out of the way unless there is something else attached, but we might have difficulty moving it because of the exhaust. Okay, so where we flipped it around there and got it out of the way so it can be done. Okay, so right here we've got we can either take it loose here or we could take it loose here. Probably just going to take it loose right here, be good enough. That's from the frame. We also are going to have to do some other things, but let's go ahead and get this bolt out right here next. Okay, you'll note I've got jack stands. The nuts are still on. They're not completely loose at this point. It's on all four corners as well. All the nuts are still on. So we're going to proceed on. We're going to take this out here. Okay, with that 15 loose, we're going to focus our attention on the exhaust here. We got two 15s on each side, two right here. Now, I've done this before, and usually I've just had enough slack with removing it from the engine that it'll drop down. And if I have any trouble, let's go back there and I'll remove it from the hanger. A little spray lubricant will slip it right out of those boots, or some white lithium. I like to use that a lot, and that'll keep us from having to take it completely out. So the next thing, we're going to take these 15mm nuts, we're going to take these off, and this exhaust is going to drop down. Okay, now you can see because of that flex, it'll just drop right on down here out of the way, so we don't have to do much of anything to it. We're just going to be cautious. We don't want to damage our flex pipe there, so we'll get something and kind of prop it up here a little bit for now. Okay, you can see that mount's loose. I've just put the bolt back in there and just pushed that up. Put all your nuts and bolts back where they go so you're not losing them in the meantime. Now we're going to go over here to this driver's side. I got a few things I need to remove over there. Okay, you'll notice that the stabilizer link has a couple of bolts that are running up back in there where those bushings are. Those are actually coming, bolts going through the top, and there's a nut on the bottom down here. Let me show you. So we got down here, we've got these two nuts that we got to get off here. So we're going to take those off. That's going to allow us to move that stabilizer link out of the way. So we're going to take those loose on both sides. We're going to start over here, and we'll take those loose on both sides so we can move that out of the way as we need to. Okay, just to show you what I did on this side to free this knuckle up, I started with the 19mm holding this brake caliper bracket. One on the top, one down here on the bottom that I'm on right now. These are going to be extremely tight. Get you a breaker bar and cheater pipe, whatever you can get. This is a 3/4, I believe, breaker bar I got here too. It's pretty heavy duty. These are going to be extremely tight, so I'm going ahead and taking these loose. Could not even get them loose with my extended handle ratchet there. Now you get you out here with a breaker bar, you can see it'll come pretty easy. So no sense in struggling with it unless you got a heavy duty impact. So first thing, we're going to take these two 19mm. We'll get this bracket and caliper up here out of the way. Now something that I'd skipped, I believe, from the other side, this here stabilizer link has to come out too. Now what I had trouble with is on the other side, these threads were kind of messed up. Could not get that bolt or the nut off of there, even holding this with the I think it was an 8mm or something. But it just rounded off, couldn't get it out, so I wound up having to actually cut that off with a hacksaw. I don't know if you'll run into that, but I got back here and I just cut it off, and I'll have to replace that. So don't know if this one's going to be the same way, if it hasn't been messed with, probably. But it got out here towards the end and it just hung up. Now here's the piece I had to cut. I had to cut both ends of this thing to get it off of there. Like I said, you got to separate that stabilizer link, and you got to separate the ball joint from that knuckle, and these are really on there. I tried to use the pry bar to pry it down and it wasn't having it, so what I'm doing is taking this completely off, taking the rotor off, taking my aluminum pipe, my rubber mallet, hitting that really hard at the control arm and knocking it down. Okay, and so we got that up out of the way, we got the rotor off. Now I can just come in here with my pipe and just hit on this and knock this down. I do need to go ahead and get that stabilizer link off there first, because that's going to keep me from doing anything here. So let me go ahead and get that. I believe that is an 18 millimeter there. Yes. So you got one on the top, the nut, one on the bottom. And then ideally you're supposed to hold it with the Allen, but it wasn't working so well on the other one. Okay, so ideally you got an 8 millimeter going into the front to hold it. Now this one's feeling just like the other side. So you hold it, but these are like really tight. Way tighter than it should be. The threads are messed up. I don't know what's going on, but you know, that's there just to prevent it from slipping while you get this loose. But this is, it's like way tighter. I can barely even hold it with my hand. So I don't know if yours will be this way, but these are. And I ordered some new ones, and the new ones have like a hex nut back here behind this side, and I made sure that was the one that I ordered anyways. I think they still have these sorry ones here, but I made sure I got one of them so you can hold it with a wrench back here while you get your impact and just run it down. You know, this way you're having to use this Allen and use a wrench. It's just ridiculous. There's really no good way of doing it, and it's just a waste of time. So if you've got like a cutoff wheel, which I don't, just cut that thing off there and save yourself a lot of aggravation. But yours may not be on there. I mean, they're not rusted, but they just don't want to come off of here. So I'm going to be hacksawing this one here off. I can tell the top, and I'll have to hacksaw the bottom. This is a real fun one to get to. You have to hacksaw it from the back side here, but this has to come off because I need this to all drop down. You can also see in here there's like a heat shield going around this rack and pinion. That has to drop down around this exhaust. So I don't know what I was thinking earlier, but I definitely got to get this thing down quite a bit. I might have to take it to the ground, but I got to get it down where I can get this out of here. So anyways, that's our next step. We're going to get this cut off here, whatever I need to do, and then I'm going to get over here and knock this off, and then we should have all of this subframe here loose. Because you see, you got a big bolt here, you got a bolt here, you got a big bolt up there in the front, and you got those on both sides. Okay, I was a little bit amazed this bottom one here actually came off like it was supposed to. I'm thinking that maybe the threads got mangled up or something. Somebody was working on it. I don't know. But this one up here, you can tell the other side was the same way. You'd get to a certain point like here, and it just would not budge. Like the threads were just messed up. You couldn't. There's no way to get that nut off there. So I've gotten one out of the 3 nuts I've taken off. So I'm going to get my hacksaw, and we're going to get a hold of this right here and see what we can do with it. Okay, there we have that ball joint popped out of there. If these haven't been messed with, you can just expect to have a little trouble. But spraying them down way ahead of time with a spray lubricant helps you out a lot. Just let them soak. We got that stabilizer cut off of there. So this is freed up here. We've got our jack stands, we've got our exhaust loose. So barring something that I have neglected, we should have everything loose. The 3 nuts on both sides, middle, front, and the back. And then we've got the jack stands. We're going to go ahead and try to lower it down a little bit. This is not that heavy. With just a subframe, you can easily lift this, but you know, you want something to set it down. You don't want it just to fall out from under there. Some jack stands, some blocks, something in there to set it down on, so you can ease it down. A couple jacks, whatever you got. Just a quick correction, I was calling that an 8. That's a 6mm hex in these. Okay, I've got everything resting on jack stands here now, and this subframe is not heavy. Now, I've got enough clearance. If I had this stabilizer length, the bolts loose on it, I could probably just take it and slide it out, and I'll show you that over here. So we just have the bolts out. You see, I probably have room at this. I could slide it out. Now the only thing holding me up is this subframe up here on the front. It's hitting on the front bumper, so I'm going to have to go ahead and take this front bumper off. There's just some screws going in here, some in the top. We're going to get the whole bumper off. I've went through this much trouble. I'm going to go ahead and lower this thing down where it's at least going to be easy putting it back together. So, but the stabilizer link, those bolts were just ridiculous tight. I couldn't even get them to budge under there, so with the impact or anything. So I'll get it down on the ground and figure it out, or I'll just leave them in place. But we're going to go ahead and lower it down. Like I said, right now I'm working on getting this front bumper off, because you see the subframe runs into that. But there's really not a lot of bolts as far as it goes. There's the 3 21mm set up in the front, in the middle, going here, and then in the back. And that's all you have on that. Now there was over here there was a line right here being held on by an 8mm. I took that off right there. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and get this bumper off. I took a couple 10mm out. We got these little Phillips push pins. I'm going to see what's holding this on here, because I need to get this bumper off so I can drop this frame on down here. Okay, this bumper is actually pretty easy to get off of here. There's a little push pins. You have to kind of pry those up with a little flat screwdriver or putty knife, because they just spin. They're those little Phillips type. And then there's the 2 10mm that I took out, and then it essentially just pulled and it came down. I had the connectors for the fog lamps. You have to pull out a little on both sides, and it comes out of there. But other than that, it just pulled right off there once it's disconnected from the fender wells. It just kind of clips onto here. So that was pretty simple, and we got that out of the way. And now I could actually see this line here that I took loose, and I can watch, and you can see I've got another line here. Now I could take this piece off, or I could just remove these 2 10mm. So I think we'll just remove these 2 10mm right here, and then that should free this up where I can move it around here. Okay, so we've got it all freed up here. We're just going to continue to lower it on down. And I'm just using this jack. I said this thing's not heavy. It will try to get hung up on you a little bit coming down. See, I'm kind of getting on the exhaust there a little bit now, so I'm going to have to unhook that probably. So I don't think it's going to hurt it any, but I need to kind of get it out here and just kind of slide it out. Really, I may just like drop it down on a pallet here and just slide the whole thing out from under the front side. Here's maybe how we go about this, because if I can get that exhaust down a little bit lower, I can just slide it out the front and I can get out here and put it together. But you can see that it may have a little fun lining it back up, but it shouldn't be too difficult. But I'm gonna see about getting those stabilizer links loose with the impact. Got it out here in case I ever have to get those loose in the future. I want to know that I can get them loose. But so we're just going to lower it on down a little more and try to take it out through the front. We'll keep an eye on our lines there, make sure they're not tangled up. We've got them disconnected. And once you know where you're going with a project like this, it's not so bad. It was just a little bit unexpected. I wasn't expecting to do all this, but I know that with a lot of cars, you do have to drop the subframes to get the stuff, especially these newer ones. So anyway, I think I'm going to go ahead and take that off its hangers or bring this out the front. I just don't want to take any risk with my flex pipe there. And we're going to see about getting this thing on down. Like I said, everything. Oh, we got a line right here that I missed. That's an 8mm right there. Got to keep an eye on stuff like that. So we need to go ahead and get that loose while we've got it. Okay, and there's another part of that line right there with the 8mm. There's one here and there. So now we got that freed up. Okay, there was one more place on this line. This right here, it's connected to this with an 8mm. Just took that off. So this thing is not very heavy. I'm just got it on some cardboard here. I'm going to slide it out the front. The exhaust, all I did was lower that by pushing it off of those rubber boots, and it's just laying down there on the ground. So if you take some white lithium and spray in those boots, they slip off there like nothing. And it's just dropped down there, and I'm gonna slide it out kind of over it there a little bit. There's no sense in really removing it because this is not heavy, and I can just slide it out. I've got the other end just kind of sitting on the front of my jack there. But I'm going to slide it out the front, and we'll go ahead and get to replacing this rack and pinion here, hopefully. Okay, I drug this out from under here, no problem. Like I said, it's not very heavy. Even with the stabilizer link on there, you can't get that rack out of there, so it really does have to come from the top. And these bolts that I were mistakenly tight are like welded on the bottom there, so you have to remove these 13s from the top, and this is what holds the stabilizer link in place. And once we get, well, I guess that one there doesn't want to come off. Let's spin it some more. Okay, so this is where your stabilizer link bushings would be, and good luck if I guess this would be the time to replace these things, because you sure don't want to have to do do all this over some stupid stabilizer bushings. So there is that. As you can see, you get this out of the way, and of course I already had that loose, but I was doing it the wrong way. So once you know how something's supposed to go, then you can easily get stuff apart. But here's the rack. Now, very easy to get to it out here. You can see there ain't much to this frame. I mean, so you got the bolts here, here, and here. And then your front, you just need to have, there's like a few lines. Got a few lines coming through here and up here, a few connections. Same thing, 3 bolts over here coming down. And then the front bumper, and that's all that holds that on there as far as the bolting the frame down. And you do have the stabilizer link and your lower control arm that has to pop out of there too, unless you want to take more stuff off. But it's easier to pop it off there, I believe. But you could take these bolts out and then the bolt out back there and remove it. But anyways, there's a good look at it. Anyways, what you're going to be looking at if you're going to replace this is the same thing on a lot of cars nowadays. This is what they have to do to get your rack and pinion replaced. Okay, I'm getting the replacement on here. I've got some medium Loctite on these, and I'm going to be snugging these back down. And we will definitely go ahead and replace these tie rods while we got them out here, and put them back. I measured the 5/8 or whatever it was. We'll put them back where they were, so we'll get it fairly close. We're going to go ahead and just bolt this down. We got our 2 big bolts back in there, and then we get this fastened down. We'll go ahead and put our stabilizer link back on, and we'll Loctite those as well. Okay, so we got the rack tightened down. We're just getting ready to set this stabilizer on here. And we are going to, it's got some self-locking nuts under there. We're going to get some Loctite on them as well. Okay, you can see we got us some medium Loctite on there. I'll just get these started back by hand. I'm probably going to take a little bit of sandpaper and go around this. I have had trouble when they've set out and gotten rusty a little bit, and I've had trouble with it. So we're going to go ahead and get these 13s tightened back down. So we'll go ahead and snug these up, and we'll see about cleaning that up a little bit. And we'll have to get these, we'll work on getting these outer tie rods replaced before we go back under the vehicle. Just be easier to go ahead and get them while we got it here. Okay, these here from this centermost, or this end here, is about 3/4 on both sides. I've just put some tape around it. This is kind of a guide. I've done that on both sides. We're gonna go with that for now, and we'll just adjust it. I'll show you how we can adjust it out when we get it all back together. That ought to get it fairly close anyway. Anywhere about 5/8 to 3/4 is about what I was getting on the other ones. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and take this off because they mangled up this here, if you can see that. It's all bent down. Won't be using that. So I'm going to get that nut off the other one too, as it looks better. So got to hold it here and break it loose there with that 15/16. And have to go see what size this thing is. May just get a crescent. Okay, and just as easy as that, we got this side on and replaced. We won't worry about tightening them any for now till we get this lined up a little bit. We're just going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, I'm just getting ready to go ahead and start sliding it back under here while I still got a little bit of daylight. I didn't worry about the torque. I just got those really tight, the sway bar and the rack and pinion. I got it tight as I could get it. So anyways, we got this together the way we need it. We'll make sure that these caps ain't gonna be too difficult to remove. I may go ahead and pop these out because I've got under there and had to fight with them. Looks like it's coming okay. So anyways, we'll go ahead and we got everything secured and everything here, so we'll go ahead and start working it back under the vehicle. It's pretty quick once you get out here. So the biggest thing is just getting it back under there and lining up my 6 bolts, body bolts coming through there, so I can just raise it back up. But I can do one side at a time or whatever with the jack, but I'm going to go ahead and try to get it going back under the vehicle now. Okay, so it's about to get dark on me. I've just kind of drug it back under here and manhandled it around, lifted it up one side at a time with just lifting it by hand, put it on the jack stands. Said it would probably been a little easier to be using jacks, but I was able just to lift it up. And I only have my one jack right now anyway, so I've just been lifting it by hand. Now that I've got it up on here, I'll probably use the jack to kind of guide it the rest of the way. But I've got it back in here. Now watch your lines. Make sure you get your lines routed back over where they go and stuff, so they don't get in the way of everything as you're putting this thing back in here. But this is all I'm gonna have to call it quits. It's about to get dark on me. But once see, I've only probably spent maybe a couple hours today doing this, so it's not been that bad. Once you know, once you get this out of here, it's way easier. Doing it the way I was doing it at first was just way too time consuming, and it was not gonna accomplish anything. Even if I was able to get all the bolts loose and even get the stabilizer, I don't think you could still get it out of there. It's just too hard to get to, and then you would have to work it out of there. So you got to drop this subframe in order to, but it's not that much. It seems like a lot, but it's not that much. Anyways, we'll get back on it in the daylight. Okay, we're getting ready to lift this up into place here. I don't have it lined up really well, but it's easy to lift and easy to move this around. Carefully, I'm just going to start lining it up, get one nut on, and then go to the other places and get another one started, and then we'll go to the other side. But very easy to do here. We've got everything together. We got the tie rods on. It's just a matter of getting this back up in here, bolting it down, and hooking some lines up and stuff. Now it might be easy to go ahead and try to connect some lines before we get it completely pushed up in there. I may take a look at that in just a second, because I could, if I can get the lines fastened up easier right now, we might go ahead and just try to do that before we push it completely up in there. But I'll take a look at it. But all we got to do is just, that one just goes on there with a clamp, and the other one has the attachment where it just screws on there with the copper washers. But either way, I can get to it, so it doesn't really matter. One of the things, we need to grease this up to make sure that that's going to slide on, so we're not having trouble with that. And I forgot to take the sandpaper to it, but I do need to get some grease on that. Other than that, there's really nothing to to it other than just lining up the bolts here at this point. Okay, you can see we got this lining up. We got the middle one, and we got the one over here. We're just going to kind of start going up on this side. Watch your knuckle there. And we go ahead and lift it up. Get our jack stands under here. Once we get them started, then we'll go over to the other side and just start lifting that one up. Pretty simple. Watch your middle mount. Make sure it stays out of the way there, but it's loose. So we're going ahead, just lifting it up into place here. It's going pretty easy. Okay, we're over here on this passenger side. Now before we go to lifting this up, we're going to go ahead and reattach these lines. We've got this clamp going here, that one going right there, and we've got one more over here, and it's going to attach right there. We got 8 millimeters. We're going to go ahead and just attach those while it's down here. It's going to be way easier, and then we'll go ahead. So we got it lined up. Make sure all 3 are lining up, and just go ahead and lift it into place. Okay, we got the one more you see sticking up right there. We're going to hold off on that one until I get these lines hooked up though, because I want to have the slack. But I got the 2 out here, so that's good enough. We can go ahead and lift it into place now. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start these on. I'm just going to be tightening them down with the impact. I think the information I was getting somewhere around 80 foot-pounds or so. I was actually thinking more along the lines of 100, but that's what information that I was getting was about 75 to 80 foot-pounds on these right here. But the main thing is to make sure they're tight. And we just got the one up here in the front, wherever it's hiding, right there. And then we also got this line here. We're going to go ahead and put that 8 millimeter back in that, reattach that. Okay, now we're just back over here on the driver's side. As you can see, we're just going to go ahead and get our nuts started in there, and we'll be able to go ahead and remove the jack and the jack stands to get everything out of our way here, so we can go ahead and start hooking things back up. Okay, one thing we can't forget is this piece that actually goes underneath that nut, and then the 2 bolts that are going to fasten in. These right here, going to fasten in there and there. We're going to put some Loctite on those and put those back. Okay, I'm just going ahead and tightening these down. Like I said, you can torque them to 80. I'm just using the impact. I'm just going ahead and tightening all the ones on this side. These 3, and then these 2 bolts. I'm just going to go over there and do the same thing. And I think I've got room to deal with those lines by the looks of it there. So we'll go ahead and probably get this side over here tight, and then we'll work on those lines up there. I think I'm going to go ahead and just leave that exhaust down for now, because it's probably going to be way easier with that out of the way. Okay, so the frame's all tightened up on both sides. We're just getting ready to go underneath. We're going to start reconnecting these lines and stuff, see if we can get all this reconnected. I just got the exhaust pulled over out of the way. I'm just going to leave it out for now because it's going to make it easier in reconnecting this stuff. Okay, I've got a 17 millimeter. The first thing we're going to work on is putting this in. Now, it's important that you have both of these copper washers. If you're missing one, then you need to get one. The way it works is the line is sandwiched basically in between these 2 copper washers. So we got to have that one going up against the flat of the line. Then we add this one underneath, and it's just going to set in there basically in between these two to seal this off. So you need both of these. Then once we have those sandwiched, the line sandwiched there, we'll go to fastening and screwing this into the rack there. But it's important that you have both of those washers in the right place. Okay, so just like that, we got both of those on, and now we're ready to feed this up in there. We'll remove that red cap right there, and we'll start fastening this first one here into place. And these have to be put back down on their brackets, so we will get that connected, but I want to go ahead and just fasten that in there first, get it hand tight. Okay, so that is snug down. That little tab there keeps it from spinning. And we just got to pop this back off and get us a pair of pliers. So we'll just get us a pair of pliers and put that back down there. Now this collar up here pushes up and down, so don't worry about it. You got plenty of slack there. But I do have to get some grease on that and get a hold of that a little bit before I can slip that on, because there's a lot of rust on there. I meant to do it while it was out, but I forgot. And then we've got the clamp that goes right there. And then we've got that other one right here that I've already got it in place, but we need to put the these little clamps back into place to hold these lines still. So I'm going to go ahead and work on getting those on and getting that clamp scooted down right there. Okay, I put a little white lithium so we could slide this on. You'll just notice your indentation right there. You can see that indentation, and just kind of line it up where it's going to have to be in alignment to where that bolt's going to come down through that indentation. So just like that. So now we're going to go ahead and we'll get our bolt over here and get this tightened up. Okay, I got some high strength Loctite on this 10 millimeter. I'm just going to go ahead and feed it through the back here, or whichever side I got to go through. It's this side. So we're going to go ahead and get that. So I got high strength. That's the last bolt that I want to come loose. I'm going to go ahead and tighten that down real good. Okay, so we're just snugging it on up here. Okay, with that good and tight, I think we're gonna go ahead and now we'll get this mount and this little heat shield back into place. Now the motor is off a little bit, so I'll have to either move it by hand or get a jack or something. Usually I can just move it by hand. We're gonna line up this, get some medium Loctite on that bolt, and we'll get our little heat shield right back here. Very easy to get this back in place too with this exhaust out of the way. Okay, and we'll just get our heat shield back into place here. All right, we'll just go ahead and snug those 10 millimeters down. We'll have this. And then I think we can go ahead and get on our exhaust here. Now, I didn't go in great detail earlier on these hangers, but just to show you what I did here. You notice you got these hangers This one here is just attached to that still. That attaches up here, and spray those with white lithium, they'll come right off. So we're just going to put that back up there. Got one right there too. And like I said, douse those hangers down good with white lithium. They'll go right on and off, no problem whatsoever. But that's all I'm going to do is lift that back up by hand. Just going to get underneath, start lifting this, and slip it back on to these little rubber hangers and stuff. It's just that easy. That's all I did, other than unbolting it up here. Okay, and see I got that white lithium on there, and it just pops on there just that easy. Already got this one. I just got to pop that one on right there. Okay, now we're just going to get on this exhaust. You'll notice this is the one right up in the very front. Now it has a little gasket, but this one back here just has this hub that lines up with that. That's all you have to do, and it's got the collar that slips up onto that, and that seals that off. So the exhaust back there is all hung, and we're just getting ready to slip this up here into place. And you just have to kind of get them both lined up at the same time, so don't go to tightening the front one and then try to do the back one. Just do them both kind of at the same time. Okay, and I got those just ready to snug them up. And this one back here, I was just kind of watching here to make sure this hub was lining back up to where it's supposed to be. And I'm just getting ready to snug them both up here. Okay, so we got both these tightened up. Another thing about these, tighten these equally, because it's a collar. Make sure that you got, you know, basically the same threads on both sides, so the collar has got equal pressure. So anyways, we're all done with the exhaust here. Everything's hooked back up under here. We're going to go ahead and go back out to the wheels. Okay, I've just took the time to put some grease on these tie rods here, and we greased the ball joint and also up in where the ball joint's going to go there. And we're just getting ready at this point to go ahead and try to get this back into place. I got to get this bolt back off here, obviously, but definitely if you take the time to grease things, you're gonna find out that it goes a whole lot better the next go around. So we're going to push this in, get this pin lined up where it's supposed to be, and once it gets lined up there, we can take our rubber mallet. But usually doesn't take a lot, but you have to have that pin lined up with perpendicular with that hole, or it won't go. Or I guess you'd say parallel with the hole, but whatever, you get the idea. But we're going to just take and knock it the rest of the way up. This went in there real easy. You'll know if you don't have it up far enough, because this bolt right here will not go. But it is lined up. And so we're just going to get a wrench and a socket on one side. This is like a locking nut here too, so we'll go ahead and get a wrench and get a socket on the other side and tighten that up. Okay, so I got the wrench on the other side, just holding it with the 13 and tightening it with the 15 on the other side. So we got that good and snug. Okay, remember our stabilizer links that were messed up. Now these new ones, you got to put these grease zerks on yourself with a 10 millimeters, nothing to it. This is an 18 millimeter nut right here. We're getting ready to put this in place. These feel better made than the original, but I made sure that I got ones. You notice instead of having, they still have a spot for an Allen, but they also have this, an 11/16 fits it perfectly. So we can get on the back side of this and hold it and just zip it down with the impact without having to waste all day on it. So we're going to go ahead and just get it up into place here. And we'll probably have to move get a jack and move our stabilizer link up to get this to line up, as you can see. So we'll have to do that. We'll probably go ahead and just get the bottom one in place. And we're just gonna, these are locking nuts, so we're just gonna go ahead and get the nut on this side. As you can see right there, we can get positioned here. This is a locking nut, and we're just going to get the 18, a little bit of an extension to get in here and get a hold of that. I'm going to get back on this other side with my 11/16 that fits nice and snug, and we'll get that tightened down there. Yeah, like I said, much faster holding that, so I just got to get a jack and push this stabilizer link up so I can get that to go through the hole here, and then I'll zip it down the same way. Okay, I took leave the top grease zerk out because it was getting in the way of trying to slide it over here into place. So I'm actually pushing the control. I pushed this up first, and then it was too high, so then I'm pushing the control arm up, but I got the bottom one on first. Just leave that top grease zerk out because it was getting, CV axle was hitting when I was trying to bring it in sideways and get in the way. So I'm going to do the same thing. We're just going to get over here and hold this with our 11/16, and then we'll go ahead and get our nut back onto the top right there. We'll just zip that down with the impact just to make it a little bit faster there. That's all we're doing. Okay, so we got that all snug down nice. I'm going to go ahead and get this grease zerk back into the back side of it, just like that lower one that you see there. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and try to slip this tie rod back into place here. Again, these have locking nuts, but there probably should be a, oh yeah, we got the cotter pin. Throw it over there. So we're going to go ahead, I believe this is an 18 as well. We're going to go ahead and snug this down, and we'll get that cotter pin back in there. Okay, if this is wanting to spin on you a whole lot, push it up, put pressure on the bottom of that with your jack, and that'll give you the pressure you need to go ahead and tighten it up. And just go ahead and tighten this down to 45 foot-pounds. Okay, we got this set to 45. Okay, you should have that pin that looks something like that. Just go ahead and slip that back in to there. You can see how it locks in there. Okay, now we're just slipping the rotor back on, and we're going to go ahead and get our caliper back on here. Okay, so we just slipped our caliper back on. We're going to go ahead and start getting these big bolts back in here. Okay, we got some medium Loctite on there. Just to wiggle it up into place. We're going to go 130 foot-pounds on these. Definitely, like I said, always make sure you can get them started by hand before you just go to tightening on it. So now we'll go ahead and get that lower one. Okay, now we're getting our lower one there tightened in. And then we'll go ahead and snug these both down. And we're just using our 19mm to tighten them both up. Okay, to get this top one, because these are in the way, you need to get an extension and get your socket. And you're kind of coming in at it this way, but you can get the proper amount of pressure doing it that way. Okay, now we're just getting ready to get our wheel back on here. Okay, and like I said, I'm using the 3/4 because the 19 fits but likes to get stuck onto the socket, so I found that the 3/4 is working the best for this. We'll go ahead and torque these like 120 foot-pounds or so, 100 to 120 once we get it lowered onto the ground, but for now we're just going to get them on here and just kind of snug them all down just a little bit to where I know that the tire is sitting on there nice and secure and straight. Said try to go in a crisscross pattern. You can tell when they get bottomed out. So I'm going to go ahead and secure this, and we're going to go over to the other side and just do the exact same thing that we did over here. Put the ball joint, reconnect the stabilizer link, and get our brakes and everything back on, and then we're going to check the alignment. We're going to get some string and we're going to run it and just see how close we are, how far we off we are, because it's going to be easy to do while we got this up on blocks. It's up in the air. We don't have any pressure on these wheels. It'll be easy for us to align. Okay, all I'm doing right now is trying to line this up straight enough till I can get an alignment. I've just run some string, tied it nice and tight, got it on the center line, running it to the back tire, and tied it back in here by where the shock is or somewhere, and I've kind of just run it, I said, along the center line, so the string is touching here and here, and then it's touching up at the front here. Now I've got the steering wheel straight, and I've got a little bit of a gap here, as you can see, if you can see that gap. It's not much, but it's a little bit. So on the other side I've done the same exact thing. Now this side, it actually needs to go back a little bit, and all you do is you just take it back until it's just barely not touching, and then move it back to where it's just barely touching the screen. So then you know that it's going to be straight in line with the rear wheel, and then your steering wheel in there, you make sure it's absolutely straight, and you can get a helper to help you adjust it if you need to. But I'm going to go underneath. It's loose. I'm just going to turn the tie rod until I get this to just barely bumping this string up against it, and then I'm going to stop, and I'm going to go to the other side, and I'm going to turn it until it's coming in a little bit because it's out too far. Okay, so I'm getting ready to crawl underneath. I've got a 17mm, and the nut, the 15/16 nut is loose. I never tightened that up because I knew I was going to be doing this. You can see this is loose. So we've got to move this tire, the rear of this tire, out a little bit. So what we need to do is get our 17mm on this tie rod, and we need to turn it back so we can get more thread here to push that out. So that's what we're going to work on doing here. Okay, so these are lining up good, and just to show you, I'm going to get on this here again. I'm going to go move it while we watch this string, and we're watching the rear of it here. If you can see, when I move that little bit, see, I don't want it to hit the string, I just want it to come up and bump against it. So that right there is perfect. So the steering wheel is straight. So we're going to go ahead, we'll get our 11/16. We're just going to tighten this nut down right here and just jam that. I'll just show you on the other side. We're looking good here. And just to show you, we can also move this back and forth and just watch. So as we come back, we get a little bit of a gap. We're just going to move it back till it bumps that string there. So we know that these are pretty straight. This is going to get us by until we can get an alignment anyways. So like I said, we're going to go ahead, steering wheel straight, the tires are in alignment with the rear. Go ahead and tighten these 15/16 down, and we'll see about getting the bumper back on here. Okay, I was just putting the two 10mm back on this line on the front. I'm getting ready to slip this front bumper back on. We're going to get our fog lamps plugged back in, and it just basically slips on here. Raise the hood back up, get the two 10mm and the little push pins. Okay, we just set it back on here. It's just that simple. We got our two 10mm. We're going to go ahead and snug down up here on the front. Okay, then we just got our little push pins. And these things are pretty useless as far as trying to unscrew them with a screwdriver. They just kind of just push up and down really. But once they're in place, they hold okay. So we're just getting these in. Just give those a push down. This just kind of pushes all clips back in over here. Okay, we got a few screws we're putting in here on this fender well on each side, and there's a couple on the bottom down here if yours ain't ripped loose like these. Okay, now it's time to get some fluid in here. I've got some power steering fluid. I don't expect that it's going to take much more than like a quart, but we'll see. I want to get a funnel and get my fluid over here, and we'll just start turning the steering wheel back and forth to work the air out. There ain't nothing to it. We'll just leave it up here while we're working the air out. It's not necessary, but it's just as easy to work the wheel back and forth. But I'm going to go ahead and put a cord in here. Okay, this is what I'm going to put in here. So it's just a 1 quart bottle. We'll see how far it goes. Okay, so we'll just slowly start putting this in. Hopefully we don't have any leaks on this thing. I get a little nervous with used ones, but I've gotten just really good deals, so sometimes these rack and pinions are kind of pricey. Oop, and I'm overflowing it here. Okay. Okay, so I got it cranked up. We're just going to go ahead and start turning this wheel back and forth, try to get the air out of here. I didn't quite get a cord in it, but we'll see if I need to add any more. I'm pretty full right there. And you can see all that air coming out of there as these wheels are being turned. That's all you do, nothing special. Just turn your wheels back and forth. Watch your fluid, make sure it doesn't get low. Check for leaks at your fittings. Good time to do all that while you got it up off the ground. Mainly any drips. We don't want to see any drips. So we're just going to work it, but it's filling, I guess it's filling real nice. It's turning smooth. So it's doing its job. Okay, I think I've got the majority of the air out, and I've got it plenty full enough, so I'm going to go ahead and just get the cap back on, and I'm going to get this off the blocks and see about driving it around, see how it feels. Okay, so you can see how much I use, like maybe 3/4 of this little quart, and that's all I used to fill this thing back up, and it was completely empty. Okay, that's going to do it for this video on replacing this rack and pinion on here. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And as always, I invite you to subscribe, and thanks for watching.